Canadians have a lot to be proud of on the world stage in general, but in the early days of the pandemic, a contagion of kindness spread across the country as groups and individuals in all provinces and territories stepped up to help our most vulnerable. Heather Down and Catherine Kenwell quickly got to work gathering the most inspiring stories from coast to coast in their book, Not Cancelled: Canadian Kindness in the Face of COVID-19. Joining me now to discuss is Heather Down. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I really, I sort of went back and looked at how quickly Canadians mobilized when this pandemic hit. It was within, I would say, hours, really. We started to see this real grassroots movement to help people. So was there a moment where you were inspired to start collecting these stories?
Absolutely. I realized there was a social history happening here, and it was important, I thought, that we should record it, one. And two, personally, I was going through quite a bit. So I wanted to focus on the positive. I had an aunt in a long-term care home who was diagnosed with COVID-19. I had a cousin who passed. We couldn't have a funeral. So selfishly, I wanted to focus on those great stories I had seen snippets of in social media and on the news.
So how did you start collecting these stories then?
Well, whenever I heard something, I would write it down and I would research. I would find the person. So if there was a quick clip on the news or something went through my social media feed, I would hunt down the people so that I could interview them.
Now, do you have a couple of favorites that you've collected in this book? And there are a lot. I love how many you have, but do you have a couple of highlights?
Yes, absolutely. And there are 49 stories because we're on the 49th parallel. But my favorite two, I think one's from Newfoundland, where a guy went around dressed up as Spider-Man to walk by houses to entertain the kids. But the person that actually wrote it was a mom of a little guy that was very inspired by it, a 3-year-old. And the video that went online went viral. But what I loved about what she said was when her son grew up, she didn't want him to look back at this time in history and say, oh, that was the time when there was stress or economic problems. She wanted his memory to be, that was the time I met Spider-Man. So I thought that was really beautiful. And the second one that I really loved was from the Yukon. There's a gentleman there who does Bhangra dancing. He's a Sikh and he lives outside of Whitehorse. And he and his neighbor did a beautiful Twitter video, but his neighbor is playing the bagpipes and it's in the wilderness, and in the background you see the typical Canadian outhouse with a crescent moon on it. And I just thought, it seems at first glance that it's opposites, but truly it's quintessential Canada.
So do you anticipate that you could probably gather another 49 stories we're only 5 months into this? I mean, how did you filter out and down to 49? You must have had hundreds and hundreds of submissions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a lot of extra, and we're already working on the second volume for next year. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But yeah, every day I hear something new and I jot it down in a little notebook to follow up with later. And narrowing it down really was a question of time too, because we put this out in 7 weeks. Like, we wrote it in 7 weeks. It took as long to print as it did to write it, because I thought it was important that we have this out while we were still kind of experiencing lockdown, because I thought it was really important for Canada to have some good news right now.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer in any way, but there's a possibility, I think we're all aware, there's a possibility we might end up in lockdown again. So these kinds of stories are what will get us through, that focus on the positive, and helping us build that resilience. I believe you're a big fan of that.
Yes. And I absolutely agree. I did it selfishly. To be honest, I wanted to focus on the positive. And then it's funny, sometimes when you do something for yourself, it resonates with others even more. The feedback we have is tremendous. One lady was gifted the book who is going through cancer treatments, and she ended up back in the hospital. And all she could think of doing was doing something kind for her roommate, because she had just read this book. Her roommate was supposed to graduate, but the graduation was canceled. So she arranged for graduation photos for her friend. And the interesting thing that she said, it was great that her friend received the gift, but what really was important to her was it energized her and actually helped her face her treatments. So that was incredibly humbling to hear stories like that coming back.
It's that classic knowledge that it's always better to give than to receive. So where can people
True.
find this book then?
So it's at all chapters, Indigos and Coles across Canada and in Independence. And Indigo also has a great online program if you want to order it online.
Okay, and if people want to connect with you on social, maybe share some stories for volume 2,
Oh,
where can they
that would
find
be
you?
lovely. Oh, yes. So I'm at Wintertickle Press on Facebook and on Instagram. Because Twitter has fewer characters, it's just Wintertickle. So
Wonderful. We'll put that up on the video that goes out on social. And thank you so much for joining me today, Heather.
thank you.